Hey, welcome to the show. You are listening to the Roosic podcast. We are a roots music podcast based out of Nashville, Tennessee, where we talk to the local music scene here and beyond. Today, our guest is Daniel Haymore. Daniel is a multi-instrumentalist based around town. He's a really good friend. Check it out.
Subscribe to our channel.
I'm always really intrigued by how those early years of someone's life kind of shapes their human interaction. Like for me, my dad was in the Marine Corps my whole life as a kid. So like when I was born till probably my brother was born, I saw no one. Like it was my isolated family, like my nuclear family, and like that was it. And so like for me, it's like I can be a very personable, outgoing person. But in my head, it's like I'm interested in keeping my house in order, and I'm a very I won't call myself a recluse, but I just have a tendency towards being that way.
So, yeah, me too. I'm very much I think it's surprising. Like people, once I know you, like we're friends, like I feel like I'm pretty talkative, especially if I had a couple beers and can be like relatively gregarious and stuff. But like I'm still an introvert. It's like I don't. Not only do I not like it, I don't seek out like meeting new people. Really, like I don't enjoy it. Like I can do it because I've had to learn to do it and like work and stuff. But like I don't enjoy it.
I think that's one of the reasons why this has been so fantastic. Is I think both Brian and I are. We're definitely in that camp.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been really...
I definitely am.
Yeah. Well, you more so than myself, probably. But with that being the case, I think one of the benefits of doing this is it has sort of forced us to... Like these are fun because like this is just us hanging out.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when someone else is in that seat that you don't know or that you might know sort of peripherally. That has been a really interesting skill. Like I think when we started this... We started doing what we thought was the smart thing. It was like, okay, we'll bring in like some good friends first.
Yeah.
Like the first few episodes, it was just people that we know really well. And it was great. And we had a lot of fun. I think in the sort of grand scheme of things, maybe that was the way to go about it. But there is something about having someone you don't know that's almost easier, because if it's like, if it's like, us, the three of us, like we know each other pretty well. So it's like, there's almost a level of like performance, if you're not careful with those first episodes that we did, at least, where you have someone in here that you know really well, and it's like, I'm not going to sit here and like ask you questions that I know the answer to.
No, I mean, I think you should, but I agree because I watch those and I think they're great, but because I don't envy you for that, because I think it is hard to be like, especially if you sit across somebody that you're like friends with and be like, all right, well, what are we going to, because what are we going to talk about, try to like keep it, some discussion going, like it can be difficult.
Yeah,
that's a skill for sure.
And at least for me, I don't want it to feel performative.
Yeah.
Because it's not, and that's, I think, really the core of like what we've kind of talked about with the intent of doing this is just to talk to people. And if it is someone that we know really well, just to hang out with them. And I think you as an audience, at least for me as a consumer, you pick up on that pretty fast.
For sure.
Like whether or not this is someone who's sitting down who like these three people, this dynamic is fresh, or these are just people who know each other really well, and you're kind of picking up somewhere.
Yeah, and I think it's all cool. It's all super interesting because then you might get something you don't know what to expect.
Yeah, it keeps it fun. I think
we got some of those coming up.
Yeah, and some people, I'm sure you guys have either seen it or will. Some people probably aren't like that awesome to.
Yeah, that's been,
try to squeeze out.
Mostly everyone we've had on here is
mostly everyone's been really, really good. It is one of those things, I think, too, where this dynamic helps immensely.
Totally.
Because Brian, forgive me, because we have said this on the podcast before
for hours.
But and this will be good for me because if it was just like, luckily nobody would ever ask me, like if they didn't know me, but if it was just somebody I didn't know, like I probably would. This is gonna be. I'll be able to talk a lot more like. Yeah, freely, and it'd be more fun for me too, just because we already know each other.
But I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before, so please forgive me. But we at some point, very, very early on, we were supposed to have someone else do. It was supposed to be me and another buddy,
Yeah,
and then Brian and Alexa were
I
just
didn't
going to do
even
background
want.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like,
My plan was to be in the other room.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
And
then-
Alexa and I essentially bullied Brian into doing this. But there was one point where
Nice.
I'm
we had
glad
to,
I'm here now.
For sure.
we had to do
It's
like
turned out good.
That was the
but we had to do like a fake episode almost at first to like just figure out how we were gonna like the blocking, how we were gonna light everything, just all of that crap. And Brian and I sat down and we were just talking, and 45 minutes goes by and we're like, holy shit, like this, we could do this. Like, 'cause if the person in the seat is giving nothing to bringing nothing to the conversation, like Brian and I can just, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
So
That's
that
important.
was-
No, you're
that
right.
was
That's
kind of-
important.
That felt good to be like, okay, like if all else fails, we'll be fine.
Or like because I've seen it. Like I have some podcasts that I don't watch much anymore. But like sometimes it'll be like, like I used to watch Your Mom's House all the time, and they would have sometimes they do episodes where it's just them two, and like some of the so I like those as much.
Those can be just as good. Yeah.
Yeah, so like you could even if you had to do that, that would be cool too.
Yeah.
You
It'd
know,
be
like-
interesting to try just the two of us episodes.
Yeah, I've actually thought about this. I've thought about it would be fun for like a big
And then
landmark episode.
The
For performance would just be us.
could be one of you
Yeah.
and then one of
Oh,
me.
that'd be cool. Yeah, I think it'd be
I
awesome.
think
Be interesting
it
to
would be
try.
fun to do for like a 50th or 100th or something big like that to just have it be us.
Yeah,
I
get
think
Alexa
that
in there.
and get like Alexa in here. The
Yeah,
three
yeah,
of us
that'd
could
be
just sit
sick.
down and
Yeah.
talk. Because I would rather do.
How come like hit Spacebar or something like you guys did? Yeah, for sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, for those like landmark ones, or just just the
wanna-
sort of
yeah,
big
so I wanna
number ones.
watch that.
I think it'd
Yeah.
be more fun for us to do that than like try and like book someone big or I think that could be really
Yeah,
interesting.
dude, I want to watch. As like a fan, like a viewer myself, I want to see that.
Yeah. That could be fun. We'll see. We got a long ways to go. We're like,
You guys are doing great. This
this
is
like
awesome.
episode 2.
I know this is so cool though. I love it.
It's been cool. Did you find that thing, Brian? That clip or no? Oh, maybe. Yeah, I do think going back to the parent thing, I do think it is interesting because I think also too it's just that kind of time in life for me at least where it's like a lot of my friends like getting married or having kids. It's just starting to get to that point in life, and I think it is so fascinating to because I think it's also that just that time in life as well where you start to see your parents as individuals. Not I mean you always are going to see them through that sort of parental lens.
Yeah.
But you start to see them as people too, and you think, oh shit, like, oh yeah, everyone's just doing this.
Yeah, and then you realize that because I mean our parents were awesome and still are. They're the best people in the world, and but even my dad's one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. But but also I get you get my age and you're like, oh, I mean, if I had 2 kids right now, I'd be like doing the best I can, figuring it out. Like he was just some dude too. He wasn't this
But there's something like really freeing
mythical
about that, I
figure.
think.
To me he was, but
Yeah.
he's just a dude.
But that's what I think is so beautiful about it is we all have the capacity to. No, I mean this is going to sound so silly, but we all have the capacity to be that image in someone's head.
Yeah, for
like
sure.
if you really work
Yeah.
your ass off and try, like you and that to me is just it's almost like a superpower. You're like, oh shit, like this is incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that's what you hope for. Like, if you do have kids, it's like you want to be that because, as for me as a child, my parents
That's the
were,
goal, yeah.
they were, infallible. You know?
It is. Yeah, it's wild. It's a wild thing to think about. At least
Like they
I
had
think
all the
it's-
answers. Whatever.
Yeah.
There was nothing they couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
Everything was fine. So yeah.
It's such an interesting shift in mindset as you get older because you start to realize just how little even in those things in which you are fascinated with and that just take up all of your time and mental energy. You just think, oh yeah, like this is everyone who's ever been obsessed with this thing that I'm obsessed with has gone through the same process that I'm going through right now.
Yeah.
And I like that. To me, I think about that all the time with music. I think about just the facets of music that I love, that I think that I've devoted my life to. It's like the only reason any of this stuff exists is because other insane people have thought the same thing and have just done more with it than I have.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. Like, music, which I'm sure we can get into, is it's tough because I don't know, I have to think about. But I think about that a lot. It's like, even people that you admire the most, and you see like the reality of some, even these mythical figures, and it's like, all that they're not, it's not that much different. You know, like they've achieved a lot more, but like, there's, there's a lot of overlap. Like I heard Bruce Boughton, he told me one time, he was like, oh, talking about like he not liking stuff he records, and I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
like you're one of the best guys ever.
It is a bizarre thing. I mean,
But I feel like anyone who's really good is hypercritical of themselves.
But I think in a way that's comforting because I'll see people that I like are, you know, literally like, especially here, like, you know, so-and-so, these guys are, you know, literally among or the best in the world. And then they'll say things like that. And I'm like, in a way that's comforting, but in a way I'm like, well, shit, there's no hope for me. You know, like,
but
there's no light at the end of that tunnel, obviously.
Yeah, but I think you just sort of learn to enjoy the dark, you know, and it's just, I think it's actually a really beautiful thing. And I think we're also, like you said, we're very lucky because we're in a place where there are so many just unbelievably talented people here that you do, it does very much relate to that seeing the parents in the full context of the person, where you start to see like, oh, these people that I admire for real reasons. Yeah. Oh, they're just doing the same thing I'm doing, and they're just doing it their own way. But it's the incredible thing is the individual way that you do it. That approach is what makes it all is the thing that's actually incredible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's crazy because then, I see people and it's like the ebb and flow for me of like, you know, it's always a joke. It's like, oh, I'm going to sell all my shit and quit. And then that's a real feeling, and it happens a lot.
I know the feeling.
Yeah, then I have to just, I feel like, then all right, all right, I want to learn this solo, and I'm going to work on that for 2 weeks. And then like, you know, like, I'm not going to play the rhyming, but and that'll be fun. And then you kind of, it's like a cycle, you know.
But it's like that's the thing that keeps it. I think that's the thing that keeps it fun, you know.
Yeah.
So, this is something I wanted to ask you because I've never really thought about this, but in my mind, at least, I don't even know what I would call you. Like, because I think of you as a steel player, I think of you as a banjo player, I think of you as a guitar. Like, there's so many different hats that I imagine you wearing when I imagine you as a musician. For you, if you had to pigeonhole yourself, or maybe you don't, but what do you think? Because for myself, I think of myself as, in terms of what I play, I think of myself as a guitar player, because really that's what I do. For you, do you have that sort of knee-jerk reaction to that question, or is it more abstract than that?
Yeah, it's a little bit more abstract, but it's, I mean, as far as music goes, like, you know, I still struggle even being like, I mean, I guess technically I'm a musician.
I'm not saying I'm a good guitar player, but
I am. But yeah, like, I'm like, I struggle with even be like, you know, especially around here. Am I even a musician? You know, and I guess technically that's true.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, 100%. But I would say it used to be different. I used to consider myself a banjo player like before I moved to Nashville. Because that was my primary instrument. That's what I played. I started playing that. I started playing banjo. Like I played a little guitar, and I'm also a little different because like I didn't really start playing music in earnest until I was really like late college and then like right out of college.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Really?
That's interesting.
So like, you know, I don't have like the depth of like I've been playing music since I was 3, like a lot of people. But yeah, now I consider myself like a steel player because that's 100% of what I play. Like, get hired to play.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, just in terms of the sort of the daily routine, what do you find you clock the most hours in on? Steel?
Yeah, it's still steel. Okay. I've been playing a little bit more I've tried to make a concerted effort like the last year to like play more banjo again, to like kind of go back and fall in love with it. No, not fall in love with it because I've always been in love with it, but just to kind of play more because I feel like I've just kind of been neglecting it because I just got so like eat up with the pedal steel, which I think is very common among pedal steel players.
It does seem like a mind virus. Once it's in there, it's like, ah, shit.
Yeah, and I don't think I have it as bad as most. I think that's why I probably like most of all the good people I know, like it's an obsession to the point of like it's all they do every waking minute. Like I know guys that like, you know, work all the time, play steel, and go home, and literally every waking minute, that's what they're doing.
One of the things that is also unique, I guess, with you is, at least for the steel players that I know, a lot of them transfer from guitar to steel. And with you going from banjo to steel, in my head at least, that's almost a more, because of the tuning of the banjo, that's almost a more natural progression. Whereas guitar, you know, I adore guitar to death. Guitar, historically, just the design of a guitar is to be a supportive instrument. It's to supply harmony, and it's based around these beautiful open chord voicings. And so I feel like the translation from guitar to steel, that's a further valley to leap than in some ways. And does that make sense to you, or do you feel like it is equally as large a valley from banjo to steel?
Yeah, I think it probably helps. I think for sure the right hand and being used to finger picks certainly is I didn't even think of that. Yeah. That's like a mechanical change. I mean, it's a little different being like a banjo versus like steel flat, but like being used to that, that's it takes a lot of people a long time. A lot of guitar players struggle with that, like getting used to. They'll play steel and they'll like, I don't want to use finger picks or thumb picks, and to really like play like country pedal steel, I think you have to eventually.
I've never been good with finger picks.
I had a phase where I was like trying to really get into like the Chet Atkins style guitar.
Yeah,
and just like you can do it without a thumb pick, but you just can't get that.
The tone isn't there.
You need that. Yeah. Thumb pick to get the right sound, and I just could not. I forced myself to play with a thumb pick for like a month. I just could not get used to it.
Yeah, see,
I am like, I do a lot of finger picking. It feels so
weird to me.
Yeah. I do a lot of finger picking, and I do a lot of flat picking. I cannot use thumb pick. Like it like my brain, I don't know what it is, but my brain just shuts off.
Yeah, I think for me, fortunately, I'd started on banjo, so I got used to the thumb pick right away. Like I'd played a little guitar, you know. But never picking, so I was like, I can't use my ring finger. So like guitar players are really good at hybrid picking. Like I can't do that.
That's 90% of what I do.
Yeah, these three. Yeah,
interesting.
Huh.
So that was easy, like moving over to steel, and then like I think the open tuning would help. I think the thing for me is, I think the thing that helps the most on steel is having like a, and if I would have said this 10 years ago, I would have like shuddered. But like I think having like at least a pretty good base in music theory is super helpful, because like. Sure. I was one of those guys where like, you don't need theory, blah blah, that guy, and I'm still kind of that guy, but it is helpful.
There's a time and place for that.
It is helpful, like, but all the guitar players I know that like know music and know, okay, all right, this is what makes up this chord, and this you flatten this note, and blah blah blah. Like it's so helpful for steel, and they pick it up so much faster when they have that knowledge.
I think you don't need music theory, but it makes things so much easier.
It does. It makes it so much easier.
It makes it, guitar players that like have a good base in that, they can pick up steel so much faster.
And I feel, again, this just might be ignorance, as with most of the things I say. But with steel, I feel like it's extra difficult if you don't have that theory, just because of the layout of the instrument. I can't imagine having a minimal amount of understanding of music theory and trying to learn steel.
Well, that was me.
Instruments, I can imagine that. Like I can imagine picking up a guitar or a banjo and trying to figure that out. With steel, it's just I can't.
I can imagine it because I did it, and like I tried to, but then and you get to a certain point, and then it's like, and I still feel like I'm there. You get to this plateau, and it's like you can't like, like you could like I could probably show you, like Brian or you and somebody like I could get you playing 1-4-5 and a minor 6 on steel in like 30 minutes, and like you could go play a gig like that. You could do like a couple double stops, and like you could do it. But then once if you become a fan of steel and like you see other steel players, you realize like how like elementary that is, and like how much more they're doing. And the only way to bridge that gap is with at least a little bit of theory.
I also love,
which I hate, because I was always like it's just because I'm ignorant. I never learned, but I was always like, you don't need it, blah blah blah. Like, but you kind of do. Yeah. I think because all the best players I know, especially living here now, is like all the really great players I know. They all are like annoyingly like know a lot of theory. Yeah. I'm just like, God, I've really got to learn this shit.
It helps a lot, man.
It really does.
Like you don't need it. You can just learn everything by kind of figuring it out. And the way I look at it is like, whether like the music theory everyone else knows, like you're going to develop your own type of theory.
For sure.
Because you just have to be able to kind of process.
For sure. It's like language. I mean, it's understanding. Theory very much, in my mind, mirrors the understanding that we have of language, where you sort of have to learn the rules of the road, so then you can break them.
Yeah.
And like for me, when I'm writing, I'm not thinking the music theory does not enter in the equation whatsoever when I'm sitting down the right.
But it shouldn't.
But it also is, in a way, it's a get out of jail free card. Not in the sense that you're robbing your creativity of that moment, but if you write yourself into a corner, which happens to everyone. The tools, you can look at your tool belt and say, okay, I have some ways I can get out of this.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have that, you're kind of just screwed. You don't know where to...
The way I look at, I see theory as just like a tool of understanding. It's not like made up rules. Like it kind of just is what it is. So like It's almost like the science of music. Like, and you get these people who are like, oh, like, I don't use theory, blah blah blah. But like,
you're using it, you don't.
They know
realize
it,
you're
yeah.
using it.
to me, that's the equivalent of like, someone saying like, oh, water freezes at below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, and then but like someone freezes stuff and he's like, oh, I don't use science to freeze my water. It's like, no, you are. You're not aware of it. But
No,
like,
that is a perfect way of putting it. Like when I teach people, it's one of the because I very much had that exact same knee-jerk reaction to music in a lot of ways when I was because I started guitar when I was very young. I started guitar, like my grandpa showed me how to play when I was a little kid, and then I started taking like formal lessons when I was like 8. And I find that when I teach someone, oftentimes, especially young people, but it happens at any age, there can be that knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, I'm not interested in that. But what I tell them is like, no, this is not a bunch of just random crap that you need to, that I need you to learn to test you on. It's like, no, like all of this stuff is just going to allow you to think about music in more creative ways. It's like, I think as soon as a lot of people, the fear is it boxes you in, when in reality it's the exact inverse.
It definitely can.
It can if you're not careful.
If you don't use it in the right way. Like some people will learn theory and then they play over a tune and they're just playing a scale up and down, and then obviously now you sound like a robot. Yeah.
But that's not what you're supposed to use it for. In my mind, at least, if you're using it properly, it's actually the exact inverse of that. You're understanding. You have a greater understanding of what's possible, and it's not rules you have to abide by. It's the way I explain it is it's all of the patterns of music. It's the ways that we have expressed the patterns of music that are occurring over time. Yep. And we can just then use those patterns in our own ways to do whatever the hell we want. Like anything you create, you can apply these. You can apply this lens over top of it and see it through that way.
And I think like people say, oh, theory doesn't make you better. I don't think it does make you better, but it allows you to get better faster.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like cheat codes.
I feel like I agree because I feel like I'm fighting that because like I don't know music at all really, but what rudimentary whatever I've learned and kind of against my will is it's really kind of been. It's like if you're in a room with hey, somebody, you want to come play this gig, and then like, let's rehearse, and then it's like, oh, hey, that's the flat 3 there or whatever, and it's just like, what does that mean? So having to, you have to know a little bit of that. I feel like once you start playing with other people, because my favorite story is, I played bluegrass for several years. I was playing bluegrass banjo, and it was like, like I could pick up a banjo, and like you would think that I was like, a decent banjo player. And I would, go and play with people and go to jams and stuff. And I knew when they said 1-4-5, I figured out what that meant. I figured out in the key of G that was G, C, and D. I had no idea why. Yeah. I had no idea why they said it was 1-4-5.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
But I knew. But when they said 1-4-5, I was like, all right, I know what that means.
Yeah.
But
honestly, really, there's something really useful about that because it's Brian and I have also had this conversation before where when you're dealing with someone who wants to be introduced to music, oftentimes. You can. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. You learn these things, and your way of learning it is always the best way of learning it. Like you don't want to just sit down and be like, "Here's how music works. I'm gonna start to finish. Here's everything. Learn it." It's like no, you have to figure this stuff out on your own. Yeah. Because then you have a connection to it. You're anchored to it in some way. Where if you don't have that private connection to how your brain figured that out, you're kind of screwed. And I think that all of the best musicians that I can think of have that in spades. They have whatever that unique way is of linking themselves to music. They have that, and then they can use all the other stuff on top of it.
Yeah, and you almost can't avoid it. Like if you don't learn the music theory, you will develop your own music theory. That makes sense to you in your own head. So you might as well just learn.
I totally agree with that.
The way so you can communicate with the musicians.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I know guys that are like incredible musicians, and they claim they don't know. And it's just like, well, they've developed their own way of kind of figuring it out. Yeah, and I still struggle with that because I really don't. But I remember the first time I played bluegrass for years and kind of like I said, knew 1-4-5. I had no idea why, and I took my first piano lesson I ever took in my 20s. And my teacher sat down and showed me, and I was just like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I was like, it's literally, on the piano, it's great, because it's right there in the line.
Yeah.
I also think it's if you are already a decent musician, it's much easier to learn theory, because, it already makes sense to your ears.
You're almost applying names to concepts that you already know.
Yeah,
is
for
really what's
sure.
happening.
I agree with that.
That's kind of what happened to me. Was I like learned everything by ear, and then when I really started trying to dig into theory and actually learn what everything was, it was like I'd learn about a concept and be like, oh yeah, I know what that is, because like it already made sense in my head, just not
you didn't have
the
language
logical
for
part of it.
Yeah.
But my ears knew exactly what it was.
That's why I also think it's very beneficial, I find, if you're teaching a guitar player to show them piano, and if you're teaching someone piano, show them guitar, or show them like.
See,
The only reason that I have a rudimentary understanding of the Nashville number system is because I took a piano lesson. Really? Otherwise, there's no doubt in my mind I have no idea why it's a 6 and that a 3 is a minor.
I had a lot of teachers say that like you have to like learn the piano keyboard because it's like so much easier to visualize things. Like I'm not like that at all.
I don't think it's easier to visualize. I think it's different. That's why I show people, is because if you're a piano player, I want to show you on a guitar, or I want to show you on a bass. If you're a guitar player, I want to, because, and it doesn't have to be.
That's what I hate about guitar, because to me, guitar, I can't play. I'm not a good guitar player. Everything I've learned on guitar, I just like memorize something. I have no clue, because to me, it's like 6 pianos on a guitar, and like it blows my mind.
Well, I think of it like this. I think that a piano is. I don't, myself as a musician, I don't want to be a guitar player. I don't want to be a piano player. I want to be a musician. And that's my goal with anyone that I sit down and have a lesson with. I say, like, I don't want you to be a good guitar player. I don't want you to be a guitar player. I want you to be a musician. And the way to do that is understand what music is, and then you're using this particular tool to do that. Now, there's obviously skills. There are hyper-specific skills that you need to learn on the technical level of how to make a guitar sound good and how to utilize that specific tool. But the goal is to be a musician. So it's like, especially when I'm teaching someone who's new to music, like I don't want them to only be able to see music through guitar, or to only be able to see it through bass or whatever, or a saxophone or whatever it might be. It's like, no, like you have to find your entry into it.
Yeah.
But understand that like what all of these things have in common is sort of the overarching music, and then you find your way in.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's a noble goal as a teacher. I would never teach anybody. I'm still trying to learn. I'm still trying to get in tune. Like, and I'm not even joking about that. Like, I went and took a lesson from Buck Reed, who he knows theory. Like that guy knows all of it. He's incredible. And I remember, and I've been at his place several times over the years, but like I went out there like 4 or 5. I've been out there like 4 or 5 times, and the last time we went, we tuned my guitar for like an hour and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
See, that's amazing.
And
I love
that.
I adore that. I think that's amazing.
I was I'm not a great player. I'm trying to be a good steel guitar player. I'm just so hopefully you can be a good musician too. But I'm not, and I'll never get there. But yeah, like, and it sounds weird, but like, yeah, like over the last year, I've been like really trying to focus on like I'm still trying to learn licks and stuff, and I wish I could play cooler licks and stuff, but I've literally just trying to play in tune.
Licks are pretty cool, dude.
I appreciate it.
They were sounding fantastic.
But like, yeah, I'm trying to like play in tune, and like but I think that's a good thing to do, But it's kind of frustrating when you're like, if you've played for several years and you're like, oh, I'm getting better and better, and it's like, oh, and then you got to go back and like, dude, you're not even in tune.
And you also get dug in. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you find that I think this happens with literally any facet of life. You can get dug in so easily, and that can happen so quickly.
What do you mean by dug in?
You can just feel as though your way of doing things is the only way that you are going to do things. And with whatever it is,
I think that's you realize it's not. You kind of got to go.
I think that's the big advantage of living here. Like I can go out every night of the week and see somebody, like the best, pick an instrument and the best players in the world, and it's just like okay, well, like what are they doing that I'm not doing? Like, well, of course, and there's also the idea that too, like for me, because I don't know, I'm a little different because I work full time. I'm not a full time musician. It's guys that are working and playing 300 gigs a year. Mm-hmm. I mean, most people in Nashville play more gigs in 3 weeks than I do in a year.
Yeah.
So that's very tough. Like, because I've always said like 4 hours on a bandstand with a full band. Like, I feel like maybe 20 hours at home is the equivalent. But I don't even. I think it's probably apples to oranges. I think there's no real substitute for like. I
agree.
Playing in a live ensemble, right? So,
and especially in a town like this, where when you're in that live ensemble. it is so live. It's so in the moment,
Yeah.
and you have to be so present.
So it's tough, but it's inspiring to go out and see that. It's also like very frustrating. But it also can be good. It's like, oh, well, I feel like I'm setting my ways. So it's like, these people are doing it, and like, either I can get inspired by them, I can ask them stuff, maybe or maybe not, but that's nice. But then also, then just try to go home and figure it out. But that's also the thing too, is like you just get that bag of tricks. It's like so deep, and I think probably factors into some of the theory and learning your own theory. But that's where I feel like for me is like someone that doesn't play as much, that like, I feel like if you give me like a couple weeks, like I can learn your music. I can like play some stuff. I can figure out your set. But like, if you got to call me, hey, be downtown 20 minutes and we're going to play 4 hours and you got to play great and like all this, and who knows what we're going to call, like there are the guys that are way better at that than me and always will be. And I feel like that's like a skill in of itself. Like there are people that are like,
I've done so many gigs that are like, I have zero time to learn.
Every time you've ever played with me for 10
dude, I feel like
I've done it too. No, I do it a lot. But it's like, but I feel like it's like like these guys that are there's just this depth of knowledge, and it's like there's just this never ending like bag of tricks that I just don't have.
I also feel though that those people who want you in that room, whomever that may be, I would hope want you in that room because you're you. And what I've found over the course of my life is that I want people playing my music with me because I respect the way that they interface with music. Oh. And that, if I have a particular sound that I want exactly as is, I could get a robot to play that. But the reason why I love making music with other people is because Brian sounds like Brian. Now, what Brian can sound like is quite varied. What you can sound like is quite varied, right? We all have these range of ability that we bring. But I also know that if I want the guitar to sound like Brian, or if I want the steel to sound like Daniel, it's only you who can bring that into the room. And now, obviously, some people's bag of tricks is a lot deeper than other people's, but there's something about, to me, the beautiful thing that I find about music is I like playing with people for whom I think bring something unique to what it is I'm doing. I'm not looking for someone who can just out-shred the next person. I'm looking for someone who can respect the song being played. For me, at least in a city like this, I mean, don't get me wrong, and I'm not putting anyone down by saying this. There are so many phenomenal players in this town. But to me, the thing that I respect more than anything else is someone who plays what the song needs exactly in that moment and nothing more. And that's a hard fucking thing to do. And that has nothing to do with how incredible your skills are, right? Some of the best players in the world can do that.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And some people who don't have the deepest bag in the world can do that. But it's about you being it's like a good conversation. You're hyper fixated on the moment, right? There's not I'm not thinking about what am I going to go eat after? Like that. None of that's creeping to mind. It's like you're just present in the moment and trying to get at something. And the people who can do that, I'll play with them as much as I can.
I totally agree. I think the best players in the world are like great at that. They can, there's a time and a place to shred all over something.
Yeah.
And they can do that, but they can also just play like the tastiest, perfect thing that you hear in your head that you've ever heard, and the good people, like all my favorite players, they do it all the time, and it's just like for 4 hours straight.
Exactly.
Like, how do you do it?
Exactly, and that is what blows my fucking mind.
Yeah.
Is when you're watching someone on stage, you play a set for an hour and a half, and you're just like, everything you just played is exactly what needed to be played. That is
Tyler Hall. Every time I see him,
it's hard to have that kind of restraint.
I feel like Nate Leith on fit. Like I feel like I love to watch him play. I don't really know him, but like every time I see him play fiddle, it's just like he plays exactly what I think should be played all the time, and it's always
can
killer.
Also fucking shred too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When that time is right, which to me, I want to hear people shred,
it's fun to hear people step out,
like,
for sure.
My buddy Will Jones, and our buddy Eddie Clayton, they always used to say, if you play with them back in North Carolina, the shred is never dead, like those guys can shred, but, so I do love that, I also never want to fall into that where like, oh, I hate when people say that, it's like, oh, like, people that shred. There's no, you know, like I don't think that's true.
Oh no! I mean, sometimes you need this. Sometimes
But
that's what you
yeah,
want.
but all the guys,
I think that's people coping with their lack of technical ability.
No, that's exactly.
That's what and I'll say that a lot.
Don't get me wrong. There is a lot of like soulless mechanical shredding, but at the same time, like there's some very tasteful
like you're
shredding
not going
that
to
can
tell
take
me.
place too.
You are not going to tell me that the fucking solo of Freebird is not what Freebird needs for 5 minutes. Like you know, like really. Like,
And I tell myself that all the time because it makes me feel better because I'm not a shred dog, but it's just not true.
Yeah, like I love one of my favorite guitar players in the world is Billy Gibbons, and don't get me wrong, Billy Gibbons is as tasty a guitar player as anyone. There's some fucking shredding that happens on those albums because that's what you want. Like that's what those songs need. And,
there's times where it fits perfectly.
yeah, and being hyper cognizant of what the song needs doesn't mean like playing the most dainty, the most dainty sort of reclusive material to support. Sometimes it means just going balls to the walls, but it's just knowing what's necessary in that moment.
Totally. And all the guys that I really love and admire, and there's so many, you know, they're really good at that. And yeah, playing with dynamics too, like, you know, having a kind of telling a story through a song, like, you know, like not just everything's not at like 10, you know, like, which is, that can be cool too, but
yeah, there's time and place for everything, but I
feel like all
most
like
of the time.
And I also
shred dog, all the shred dogs I know can like still do that, you know, they'll take you up and down and, you know.
Yeah, I also feel like you do get, like playing live, you do get the most like positive response from the audience when you just play some like shreddy
Well, yeah,
shit.
because
because I've gone through period like I don't have like crazy chops, but I can play some like fancier, you know, flashy stuff here and there.
Brian, you
and
suck.
Like,
Shut up.
I've
Brian is
had,
amazing.
I've gone through phases where I'm like really hard to try tastefully and like not a single compliment after the gig. But when I just like let loose and just play some like fast, flashy shit, everyone's like, "Oh, dude, that was so sick."
Yeah, but also like musician Nashville. Sometimes it's musicians, so they have a little bit more. But like, yeah, you can't really go off crowd participation. I feel because then like all you got to do is just play like some stupid bend, like just spam it like for like 30 seconds, and then that will elicit an applause break.
You
know,
gotta find a balance.
Yeah, like that's also like I do it. I'll be honest, I've done it like, and it works, but like it's also kind of stupid.
Yeah, you know when you're on Broadway trying to get that coin, you got to do shred. You know who's the master of that shred though, dude? Who's our favorite Instagram boy? Dude, you know we got to get on the podcast.
Which one are you talking about?
Who do you think I'm talking about?
Stratcat,
dude, we gotta get Stratcat.
Have you seen that other guy I sent you the alien fingers or something?
Yeah, okay.
He plays over like jazz standards and just shreds like Kerry King from Slayer over them.
Dude,
well, what's it?
We gotta get. Okay,
What's
Stratcat, if you're listening, I love you. I will fly you out to Nashville, Tennessee, to be on this podcast.
I'll check him out. I'm not hip to Stratcat.
We'll get you after the podcast. I'll show you.
Dude,
my favorite meme.
I don't know if he posts anymore. Now that I think about it, I haven't seen a video of him in a long time.
My favorite meme though is like it'll be like it popped up on my social media occasionally, and it'll be a video of some. I mean, it's probably really happened. It'll be like, dude, you got to get down here. There's this guy playing the Crazy Train solo over everything, and it's the best. He's like, dude, he's like every song is just the Crazy Train solo, and I'm like that type of shit. I love, dude.
But there's.
It's like my buddy Zach Robertson, great guitar player. I'll go watch them play sometimes, and he'll be playing with like a vocalist or solo or duo or something. He'll play like as a joke, he'll play like the chair George Strait outro at the end of like every song, whatever the key is. He'll just play, and it's like just to get a laugh. And it's the best thing. I love it. It's my favorite thing.
As someone who didn't start playing music until you were a little bit older, what was the music that was the catalyst for getting you interested in it? Why pick up a banjo at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like we always had guitars around. My dad had a guitar. Like I had a little like 3/4 sized Fender acoustic when I was like younger, but it just never took. And then my brother had a Japanese Strat. He got off a guy in town. There was this great guitar player in our town named Clancy Lyons, and my dad was always like looked up to, and
that's a perfect name for a guitar player.
And he was like a Chet Atkins, like he was a great guitar player, and but he always had guitars around. And so like whenever my dad would like go over there, and like I bought like a cheap acoustic off of him when I was in college, like for like $80, and it was great, And it was just a little import guitar, but we had that, and then my brother got a Strat from him, and my brother was a great guitar player, or is, but he just doesn't play music. Like he played like all through like middle school and high school, and he knows like every deep cut like grunge, lick in the world. That's what he grew up on, and so he was really good. But he would just play in his room a Strat like unplugged, like acoustic electric guitar, and like learn all that stuff.
That's cool.
And he plays bass, and he's a great musician. Like he's a way better musician than me. Like I remember when we were kids, my parents, I guess to go even further back, they put us in like Suzuki Method violin.
Oh, okay.
So I was like 6, and my brother was 3 years older, and he was in violin. And I, as of course older brother, I was like, I want to do that too. And then my mom was like, all right, and then I hated it. And he claims that he told our parents that he wanted to get fiddle lessons to play like bluegrass and stuff. But they put us in like Suzuki Method, classical. But I always remember and maybe I don't know if I'm misremembering, but in my mind we would have like the little books that you would go through, and he could get through like 2 or 3 by the time I could get through 1.
Oh wow.
And so I feel like but it's funny because like I always tell people like if he played music half as much as me, like he'd be way better, but he doesn't like want to as much as me, I guess. And he has other hobbies.
It is fascinating how people take up. Certain people do pick up much faster than other people.
Yeah.
Like I have one kid at the school I teach at who has love his kid to death, has no interest in music whatsoever, none. That kid knows music. He for whatever reason, he just has a mind where I can show him something, and he can internalize it and spit it back out to me.
Yeah, and that's an interesting topic too, because I've talked to people about like talent, versus like practice, and
99% of his practice, but there is that 1%.
Every great player I know, like if you really ask them, they all, at least there's a period in their life where all they did was play whatever they're like exceptional at, and they were obsessed with it. But there is no doubt that like if I could play guitar 8 hours a day for the rest of my life, and I'd still never be as good as like you or Brian. Like I don't say that to like badmouth myself. That's just the reality.
I don't know.
I do
now,
genuinely.
I would be way better, and I would be a lot better.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
you would obviously improve, but like there is like. If I started at 2 years old, like I'm never gonna be like a Tony Rice on, like it's just not, and that's okay. Like nobody else is really either, but so there is a little something. Some people are like, there is something about like talent, but but it's still this practice,
I used to think that there was like no talent, and it was all how much time you put into it, but. I've met some people who have just gotten so good so fast. Where it's like, okay,
I've seen some guys.
They got something different.
I think it's
than what
wiring.
I have.
I think it is wiring. I think there are people who, for whatever reason, their mind is malleable in a specific way to allow them to be able to pick up on these musical things that maybe my mind can't to that speed.
Yeah, I agree, and even as much as like hearing, like I've tried to work on, like I said, being in tune, like hearing when I'm out of tune. Like my brother again, like he has way better pitch than me. Like he'll be like we'll be playing or something, and he would be like, you got to tune that G string. I'll be like, it was fine as far as I knew.
Yeah.
And, so that like it don't think he has like perfect pitch. Like that's an affliction. I think
tuning is another rabbit hole you can really lose yourself in.
Like I think perfect pitch is an affliction personally.
I completely agree. 100% agree.
Yeah, but also you want to play playing in time and in tune is more important than like if you can play a bunch of cool licks, but if they're not in tune or in time, then it's not as good.
But guitars are like never perfectly in tune. They're always a little out.
Well, that's the steel too.
I had a phase where I was like really trying to get my guitar like as perfectly in tune, no matter where I was playing on the neck, and I was basically just losing my mind. Like, oh no, this one's got to be slightly sharp, and this one's slight. And then eventually, I was like, okay, this is never gonna end.
That's the steel guitar to a T. Like you have to make there's like compromise because like. You have the 10 open strings, and then you have pedals and knee levers that raise and lower. Mm-hmm. And some strings get raised and lowered, and so it's just like I don't know.
You can never get it perfectly.
Never.
But
never.
That's but you hear but then you hear somebody like guys that are in tune and like they get and there's everybody. It's all discussions too. There's like there's these sweetened tunings and the tempered tunings and you got to count 3 cents flat and sharp for this, that, and the other thing and. So it's tough, but but when it's right, it's you can hear it. Mm-hmm. But it's hard. It's hard. People laugh, but it's hard to get in tune. especially on
really,
stage.
I try
really
to
is.
just ignore it.
I try to just completely
Otherwise-
keep it out of my mind.
Me too. Like as long as it's not like egregious.
It makes sense on pedal steel because you're playing an instrument. Where
Yeah, well, I'm sure if anybody
mechanically, there's just so much going on.
Yeah, and well, and
you can really go between notes on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there will be a million tuning issues if anybody watches my performance, but it's fine.
I didn't hear any.
Yeah,
It's the reality.
Over my head or my.
That's what I said.
Sounded
I told
great.
you guys earlier. I was like, yeah, it'll be an accurate representation.
There you go. Perfect. That's all we asked for. Was there music in the house growing up as a kid?
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, we can get.
Oh, no,
I would love to talk about.
I'm just really interested by this because most of the people that I know in my life who have been obsessed with music, it comes at an early age. It's like getting some kind of a plague. You know what I mean? Like, and then you can never you can't kick it.
Yeah, so I really came late. Yeah, but so the good news is that my dad he had a guitar. He was like a big Glenn Campbell fan, and he loved Chet Atkins, but was never like played a lot of guitar. But he had a guitar. He had like an old Ovation from the '70s.
Oh, that's cool.
He showed me like GC and D and Wildwood Flower.
That's all you need right there. You're set.
And but then I didn't play. Didn't like in high school. I never picked up a guitar. I was listening to all kinds of other stuff. I got I still I used to listen. I still listen to I got into listening to a bunch of hip hop and like heavy music and. But yeah, there was always music around. My parents were of the age. They were kind of from the '60s. So all of the oldies. Motown. Beach Boys, Cream, ZZ Top. Like my dad had Cream. They had a record player and they had like Cream, and it was like Beach Boys, Cream, the Four Tops, ZZ Top,
That's
Eliminator.
awesome,
Like
such a good
CCR.
album.
I remember we played Little League, and my dad we'd listen to like CCR on the truck on the way to ball games and stuff, and so that was cool. So there was always my parents loved music, but like weren't musicians.
Okay.
But there was always music around, and then yeah, like really like into high school and then really into college, it was because of just some of my friends. Like I got into like heavy music. A lot of my buddies I went to school with were playing like in heavy metal bands, like hardcore bands. And then I have to give a shout out. The reason I'm probably here now doing what I'm doing is my buddy Brandon Marshall. He got me into like bluegrass. Really, like there was always bluegrass. Like I grew up in northwestern North Carolina, in the foothills, and so that's like the holy land for like bluegrass and old time music, and heard it growing up, but never like didn't have a
It
member.
didn't grab you, yeah.
Yeah, my immediate family member, we didn't have any like musicians, so I didn't grow up with like a fiddler, my dad playing fiddle or whatever. But it was always around, and so you just get immersed. Even though I didn't play music, it was always around. And then my buddy Brandon, they used to go to like bluegrass festivals all the time, and then so I would hang out with him, and kind of against my will, we would be hanging out and like going out, and then like at the end of the night, he would always like put on like bluegrass, whether it be like but a lot of it like more contemporary, like Blue Highway. But then we would listen to even like some Old in the Way, like Jerry Garcia stuff,
Nice.
and he got me really in. Then I started like falling in love with bluegrass, and then kind of pulled that thread. Went back to like Flatt and Scruggs, and then all the way back to like the genesis of bluegrass, and then I was like, man, I want to play banjo. So like when I got out of college, I bought a banjo and started playing it because I was living in Raleigh and I didn't have anything to do. So I was working in an investment bank. And I would work at an investment bank all day and go home and play banjo. And so yeah, so then I was obsessed with bluegrass for years, for all those years, and then I was in Raleigh playing banjo, and I wanted, for whatever reason, I wanted to get a pedal steel. I heard pedal steel. That was kind of right around like the countryside, like follow the bluegrass, you get kind of back into old country because some of those cats, they were playing old country, but then you get back in like the Hank Williams, like, before, the Grand Ole Opry before, Bill Monroe, had to call it the Bluegrass Big Bang.
I have sort of the opposite way in with bluegrass music because to me, bluegrass is almost like out of my wheelhouse because my whole background is in traditional American roots music, and so to me it's like when you get to bluegrass, that's sort of like where my knowledge kind of ends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like the construction, I as a listener, I love bluegrass music, but it's just sort of out. I feel in a lot of ways it's out of my wheelhouse because that's almost like where the timeline kind of starts to stop for me.
Yeah.
Which I feel like most people it's sort of the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just got obsessed with bluegrass and like reading, learning, playing everything I could, but then also got into country, and then around that time, that was like kind of when the kind of the lower Broadway back before Broadway was kind of what it is now. And then like, but some of the bands like BR549 and, Hank 3, and I got really into like Hank 3 and stuff. And Andy Gibson was playing steel for him. And for whatever reason, I was like, oh, I want to do some country stuff. I need a pedal steel. And I randomly, like, luckily, like now looking back, because we were talking earlier, they're not like readily available usually, but somebody had a Carter starter that was like relatively cheap, it was like $600, which
nice.
is a great deal now.
Yeah.
I mean, in 20 minutes for me, so I went and picked it up and had never seen one in real life, up close. Never held one, and luckily they had like a little CD from Carter, the steel guitar company, of like how to set it up.
Oh, that's really nice.
This is the tuning for E9.
Wait, what year would have this been roughly?
This was 2012.
Okay.
So, and then I was like, all right, so I want to do that. And then I got really into playing pedal steel, and like ever since then, I've just kind of been. And then right after that, I moved from Raleigh to Winston-Salem, which is like 30 minutes from my hometown of Mount Airy. And there was my buddy Toby Hyatt, who's a great musician. He called me one day because I just moved kind of back to town, and he was like, hey, but not in like Winston, the larger city, like my hometown was like 45 minutes away. He was like, man, there's this kid playing telly at this place downtown. Like, me and my wife went to go eat dinner, and I just heard somebody shredding a Telecaster, and I was like, who is that? And he was like, you got to come see him. And it was Will Jones.
Oh.
And so I went up there, and he's like 21, at the time. And it blew my mind. And I'd been playing steel for like maybe a year, and it was terrible.
That's all. Yeah.
But I was like, hey man, I play pedal steel, and he was like, dude, you should bring it up sometime. And like, I was like, all right, I'll be here next week, because he had like put a band together and was like hosting an open mic.
Really?
In like our little hometown, because we're from the same area. He's younger than me, but and in this place, it was Old North State Winery. It was an old like department store in the little downtown that they had redone into like a little restaurant, wine bar, and basically it was an open mic, but ostensibly it was a Will Jones show every week.
Yeah.
Him and another guy, Tim Elliott, who's another like established and a great singer and a country artist. And they kind of would host this open mic, and so people would come up and play, and then like you could do like your normal open mic stuff, or it's like, hey, we have a full band here, like we'll also just back you if you want us to like play on your stuff or whatever, you want to do a cover. And then so there would usually be like 2 or 3 people, and then it'd be like an hour and a half of like a show basically, or like a cover gig, like a Broadway type thing, and people loved it. Like it would be it was Wednesday nights, and like it would be there'd be 200 people there, which is maybe not that much, but it was packed.
But
it'd be packed.
To have a packed anything on a Wednesday night.
And those guys were so sweet to me, because those guys were already like really good. Will was already like fully formed. He would probably tell you not, but he was already like that good. And I had no business playing with him or Tim Elliott, great singer as well. And I had no business being up, but they let me like play with them, and like that probably helped me more than anything to like get better. But I think it also kind of was bad, because that wasn't like my first like experience. Like it's like, so I probably took for granted, like, not everybody you're ever going to play with is like going to be this great, But
I think that's such a great blessing. I mean, I really do think that you either rise to the occasion or you don't. That's not to say that you can play things beyond your ability, but to be that green on that instrument, and to be put in a situation where you can try to actually utilize the shit that you're learning. That's amazing. There's nothing in your life that can be more beneficial to you in that moment than exactly that.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it was just the luckiest thing in the world for me. And I got to play banjo too. Will's he's a bluegrasser. And he is the person that's like been playing since he was old enough to hold a guitar. So he like has the full breadth of like a lifetime of it. But I got to play some banjo too. So, we would do some, we'd play like, Freeborn Man and stuff, do some banjo tunes, and they, every once in a while. And so that was really fun. So yeah, getting to do that, and that was really formative for me. Before that, I did like, when I first moved to Winston, I did like found a guy who's a sweet dude, and had a gig, and they would play for like funnily enough at the Bojangles, like a couple times a month, like in this area of Winston. And it was awesome. You just go up and
local Bojangles.
Yeah, my dad would always crack up. He was like, yeah, dude. He was like, you're on the he was like you're on the fast food circuit.
There you go.
But then I started going up to Mount Airy every week and playing with Will, and that was really cool. And so now we're like really good friends, and that's where I met him. Yeah, it's so funny. Like, my buddy was like, dude, he was like, all I heard was somebody shredding telly, and I went around the corner and was like, who is this guy?
That's all it takes, though. I mean, when you hear something you like, you know it.
Yeah. And so then I took a job. I'm working this whole time, and then I took a job in Nashville. They moved me out here. My brother had lived here for a few years, not playing music. He was just out here for work as well. And
because what year did you move out here?
I moved out here in 2016.
Okay, I was gonna say, because I know you beat us by a couple years. I thought you were here right around the same time, though.
Yeah, so I've been here, be 9 years in April.
Okay.
And when I first moved out here, I was working a lot and driving back and forth, and so it took me like 2 years to like make any friends. And but yeah, it's been great.
And then you met all of us, and life is good enough.
Yeah, for sure, for real.
It is such a strange thing when I think back on just the progression of events, because a lot of us, I think, did get here around the same time, but then some of us would just sort of, like with you, we just started hanging out because I don't even really know how those things transpire. It is one of those very interesting elements of life where it just feels like things work out the way they're supposed to work out. But yeah, a lot of us who are in the music scene around here, for whatever reason, we kind of just got here around roughly the same time. There were a few people who, like yourself, or other people who were here for a good long while. But obviously, people like Timbo have been here forever. But it was a unique moment where a lot of us just sort of showed up.
Yeah, and I think that happens, I guess. There's like, classes and, people are moving here all the time. But yeah, it's really kind of, it was kind of a weird confluence of events that even I'm even here in Nashville, like I said, because I didn't move here strictly to like play music. It was obviously when it was like, hey, I got a job opportunity in Nashville, I was like, perfect. I'm like playing pedal steel. Like, that's great. Like, let me do that.
Yeah, that's got to be a great feeling to feel as though you have, you still have the security of what you were, what the path was that you thought you were going to go down, but then to have that ability to really try and match your chops.
Yeah, I think that's me different than a lot of folks too, because like I'm not here doing music full time, and it's good and bad. Like don't get me wrong, like having a regular paycheck is great as long as I can keep a job, keep my job, which I'm very thankful for. But it's good and bad, right? Because like I can't. There would be times where it's like, hey, you want to go do this gig or go on this run, and it's like I can't, but I would like to.
Do you ever plan on like going full time with music, or you plan on sticking with a day job for a while?
Yeah, I'll probably stick with a day job. I used to have like there have been times like over the years, like when I first moved to town, I was like maybe like in a few years, maybe I'll do that. Maybe there's a path to where I'll do that, but at this point, I'm not young anymore. I'll probably not.
I think it's harder and harder to check out. At least that's what I feel in life. I mean, I feel like it does. Like I was saying earlier, you get dug in, and you can, and not that that's even a bad thing, but life just gets expensive, and you start to have expectations on life.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think I would, right? Like, I think I love playing music, so like if there was a good opportunity, I think it's like the chicken or the egg thing, right? If there was an opportunity for me to play full time, I would love to, but I think because I can't, take all the opportunities, or because I'm not willing to like quit my job and like pursue it full time, that I'll just there won't be, you got to like, not to, paying dues is the wrong way to put it, but like, I'm just not going to play enough gigs and meet enough people and like, be like, all right, well, yeah, and I've been playing in this, at this gig, and then they got picked up to do this, and recommend, they're just those links. I just don't think will happen as much because like, I'm not doing that. Where if I quit my job and I'm like, I'm going to pursue it, like, I think that happens a little bit more, but I think it's tough.
It's complicated too. When we had Chris on a little while back, and we were talking to, that's Chris Weisbecker for anyone listening.
I love Chris.
And we were talking about a similar thing where Chris was saying, like even for him, he has his day job, which is a little more like, he's a little more lenient with, because he does lean more into music than you do probably. But he was even saying, there's a threshold for me where it's like, if a great job opportunity music wise shows up, I really have to make sure that a certain bar is hit before I can commit to that, because I have all these other things that are keeping the ship afloat. And it's like, if I forget the example that he happened to use in that instance, but if whoever asks me to do something, I got to really know that it's worth doing, even for him who isn't as at this point invested in a career, for lack of a better word, outside of music. And so it's one of the things that it's so hard with music. People don't understand,
Yeah, it's
there's
tough
so
business,
much
man.
that comes along with all of this stuff, and we all have different ways of. There's not a right way to do it,
Right.
But there's
That's
just so
for
many.
sure.
It's so multifaceted that it can be daunting for people. I mean, you spend your whole life trying to figure out that calculus.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong way. Absolutely, and yeah, I think there's a world of people around us here that are doing that, and everywhere that are doing. I know full-time musicians, not in Nashville, all over the place, but it's tough. And yeah, for me, it's the same thing. It's like because it's like, hey, I might get. I could get, not this ever, but I could get offered, some huge gig and be like, all right, even if we're going to go on tour this summer, well, it's like, well, then, and usually what happens if you do that for people that are full time, they've got other things and other gigs, and they'll come back to town and pick stuff up. But it's like, well, yeah, that's great, but then like, what am I going to do after that? Like, that's only the next 3 months.
Exactly.
Like, so it's, and especially for me, where it's like I've never made the leap. Like, I totally respect everybody that does, because I think to really do it, I don't think you have to, because I think it is nice. It's nice for me to be able to like not have to like rely on it, and to like it takes some of the edge off of like the really lean months, that I'm sure everybody
Totally.
experiences.
Yeah, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do
Yeah.
musically and keep it fun.
Yeah, but then the other side of that is you don't get as called as much, because like it's like there's people that are playing all the time, and then the other thing of being like. Their iron is so much sharper, and so they're better players. Like, I say that, there's no ego. Like, I've seen people come to town and be like, oh, like in my mind, like over the years, be like, oh, we're like we're similar, like
Yeah,
they're
comparable
pretty
level.
good.
Yeah.
And then just like, in a year, they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you should definitely hire them. Like, they're way better than me. Like, people will call me and I'll be like, yeah, did you call these other 20 people first? Because like, like you should call them. Like, they're going to, that's fine.
Who are some people around town that you play with on a semi-regular basis?
Man,
Because I feel like you've played with. I mean, obviously we've known you for years. You've played with so many different people, and whether it's just like pickup shows or whatever.
yeah, I've played with a lot of really great people. I don't really do anything right now like super regular. Like, I mean, over the years I've played with. My first gig in town was Pat Reedy. So,
oh really?
yeah,
That's
shout
really
out,
cool. That's
shout
really
out
cool.
to Pat Reedy and Leo Grassel, who's an amazing pedal steel player. He sold me a pedal steel years ago and hooked me up with my first. I subbed in for him. Was my first gig in Nashville.
That's really cool.
So I did that, and that was really cool because I got to go out on the road a little bit with Pat. I would take off work, and we would go Missouri and play Missouri and Illinois and do like little runs and stuff, and that was really helpful for me. Like that was another formative experience where it was like, hey, Leo was nice enough to like throw me a gig, but it was like, hey, can you we got to play 3 hours, and this Thursday night, Saturday night gig, and I was like, oh shit, like I got to learn Pat played a lot of originals, so my approach, and I still think this is true, is I was like, I'm going to learn the first song on the set list like front to back.
There you go.
And then, because then when we're on stage, she'll be like, "Oh, nice,"
Yeah.
And then the rest of them, I'll just like as much as I can.
That is the move for anyone listening who wants to be a musician. Do exactly that.
I
As long
honestly,
as you make a good first impression.
I honestly think that's a good. That is the move. Like if you because it happens a lot here. It blows people's mind. Like we get so used to it, but like when I go home and talk to family members and friends, like it blows people's minds to be like, "Oh yeah, I played a gig with so and so, and I just showed up at the Palace, and I never met them before." And they were like, "What?
Yeah.
What?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
It's that language thing. It's if you.
But then covers is
Yeah.
a little because you have like the really great Nashville songbook kind of, so you've probably played those songs before, right? Not with those people, but and that makes it a little easier. But like in the case you're doing originals, yeah, like especially if it's like I have learned that too, because it's easy to be like, we've probably all heard stories of like people that are like great players and be like, yeah, they're great, but they just didn't learn the songs.
Yeah. Oh, for
Especially
sure.
on original
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So like learn the songs, but like if it's a situation where everybody knows that like, hey, this was last minute, like nobody's gonna hold it against you, like learn that first song, and then like then figure it out.
of those songs, because you're a songwriter as well, like you do write your own material. Of those songs that we would call the Nashville standards, which are the ones that stand out to you as just phenomenal songs? Are there any in that catalog that you're? I mean, as a songwriter, I'm sure I'm not really of all of them that I'm in awe of. But are there particular ones that you just find just incredibly beautiful or just incredibly moving?
Well, I'll argue with that. I'm not really a songwriter. That's one of the people like you and everyone that writes songs. I don't know how people do it. Like, I've tried to write songs, and it's like, I think it's incredibly difficult, and I have so much respect for people to do it, because that's a whole nother like can of worms, I think. And I literally, it's like magic to me that people can sit down and like.
I think it's songs. Magic to everyone who does it too. I mean, you get acclimated to your relationship with it and trying to make it as much routine as you can. Like anything, you try and work your butt off. But I think that's, even to the people who do commit their lives to it, it's still magic to it. I think that's what's terrifying about it. Is there's like, at any point this could stop.
Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, like, oh man, yeah, I have so much respect for songwriters, because I think that's got to be like the hardest thing ever. But yeah, as far as like songs, and I don't know, there's so many. I'm such an old country fan that, like, basically anything that Merle Haggard's ever done, I would put in that bucket. But then there's so much other good stuff that kind of not maybe like that you wouldn't necessarily hear as much on Broadway or even in Music Valley. But the thing I like about a lot of like the old country stuff that you hear as you go see the Playboys is some of that interplay, like a lot of the you think about like the Troubadours, where the interplay between like Leon and Buddy Charlton, and like the instrumentalism, like it was so good. And like just some of the parts that, and you go see like the Joshua Headleys and, the headliners, and, you go see some of these bands that are just, and they have all the little like licks and interludes, and it's just so cool. But yeah, otherwise, like, yeah, I mean, anything, all of the classical country stuff, but I think there's a lot of like other stuff that kind of people sleep on that maybe isn't part of like, we'll call it that songbook. I mean, I think they're all great songs.
Yeah.
But like, like, everything. Yeah, exactly.
Kenny's agreeing with you.
But like, all the stuff like Harley Allen wrote, was a great songwriter. He was kind of in the bluegrass world, but also wrote a bunch of like country songs. And man, now that I've met some songwriters, just knowing some kind of the great songs that kind of aren't famous in Nashville. Like, there's so many great songs that maybe everyone doesn't like instantly know, and that's been really cool to like.
Give us your top 5.
Oh wow, we're gonna do a list now. Jesus Christ.
Just songs in general,
Brian.
Just underrated
songs, just in general.
Nashville tunes.
That's hard.
Oh man, that is hard.
You're really putting them on the spot here. Jesus, we might have to help each other out to get this.
God, that is what a question.
That's hard. No, there are so many underrated songs, and I think also this happens just with songwriters in general, even songwriters who are highly recognized, or at least within the context of their particular music. I often find, I think this is the case just generally with most things, the songs in which I'm the most in awe of tend not to be the songs generally that are the most well known. Sometimes that's the case, but oftentimes it's the song on 2 tracks in on the B side that you listen to and you think, excuse me, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, and now I do have like because I grew up and I have a pretty deep history with like a lot of different genres too. So, but I'll give you one for country that I think surprises people coming maybe from me just because I'm just like a random like dude that plays country. And maybe this, but like I think an incredible song is the Trisha Yearwood song. I'll think of it in a second.
I'm telling you, I'm not going to be able to help you out with this one. This one is out of my wheelhouse.
She's in Love with a Boy.
Okay, I don't think.
Is that the title?
I don't think
it might not be the title, but like
look it up.
That Trisha, I don't know who wrote it, but I think it's such a well written song. Every time, it'll come on the radio, and I'll listen to it the whole way through every time. I just think it's such a good song. Like, I think that would probably surprise people coming from me, maybe.
There's some songs like that like "Clean Up Woman," Betty Wright. And that's one of my favorite songs in the world. And that, first of all, just a great piece of songwriting. But there's also there's specific elements of songs that can put me in awe sometimes. And like for that, like I think that guitar part is one of the best guitar parts of all time. And it's just a repetitive riff for 80% of the song, but it is exactly what the song needs. And it's so good. Anytime I have to come up with a guitar riff for a song, I will think somebody wrote that fucking guitar riff. You can write whatever the hell you need to do with this song.
I think about that with like, with like Motown. Like if you think about like have you ever seen the documentary Standing on the Shoulders of Giants?
Yeah.
Like, man, my brother got me into that because he was in playing bass for a while. And he was like, and turned me into like a James Jamerson disciple. Mm-hmm. And I think he said this or somebody said this, and I totally agree. They were like, I mean, not that the vocals on the and the artists and the singers on those aren't, just the best, some of the best stuff that's ever been done. But if you could take the vocal tracks off of those, and those things are still hits.
Oh yeah, oh my god,
yeah.
Jamerson's hook is just unmatched. So dude. Unmatched.
And I that's also my favorite. I love to like give shit to bass players. Like they'll come to gigs, and that's a classic joke too. Is like go show up to a country gig and a bass player's got like a 5-string bass. Like, what are you gonna do with the other 3 strings? But I always say like, I always crack up. I'll be like, hey, Jamerson only needed 4.
I was like, he needed 4 and he needed 1 finger, and he was set.
Yeah, so Jamerson only needed 4. You don't need more than 4. But,
exactly.
I know that's not true, but
no, but there's again, it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, that there's something about serving the song, and serving the song doesn't mean playing the boring shit. It just means finding the thing that like just makes it groove.
Yeah,
I fucking love when people can do that. I love that.
I'm in
awe of that.
I'm in awe of like like session guys too, because they'll go in like, especially back now too, but back in the day, all right, we're gonna go in and cut 3 sides a session, and I'm gonna do 2 or 3 sessions a day, and it's like, how do you come up with like I only know like 4 licks. It's like, how do you come up with, like, I play the same thing on every, and it's fine, like, it is what it is. Like, so all I know, like, if you call me, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
It's just like, this never ending, like, the creativity, because it's like, guys that, like, that did it 40 years ago, and everybody's still copying them, like, I'm just in awe of that, and then being able to do it quickly and in tune, and, time,
quickly.
The studio thing is, like, I'll try to do, like, an Instagram video at home, and it'll be
take 47.
Yeah, and also I feel like Pro Tools is, I feel like it's a microaggression that they like put the number of takes. Like, I don't need to see that, man.
Yeah, I don't want to know.
Like, there's no reason for that to be there.
That's funny.
I guess if you're working with real musicians, maybe it's like you do 3 and you're like, we like 2.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, I don't need to see that this kickoff took me 37
in the age
takes.
of TikTok playing, that's probably the last thing I need to see. I don't
need to be. I'm well aware that this took me 37 takes.
Yeah, there's something about the vibe of recording too that's so much more stressful than like playing live.
I hate that. I would rather. That's why I like getting people in a room, just putting microphone and just play.
I think because like when you're playing live and you make a tiny little mistake, like that moment is gone forever.
Exactly.
Whereas like when you're recording, you make a tiny little mistake, it's solidified permanently forever in that recording.
Totally. That was the big takeaway
so, like,
I had.
You're so focused on trying to play everything perfectly, it almost like gets in your head and makes you play worse.
Yeah, I mean, you always hear red lights, and that was the takeaway I had the first time I ever tried to record anything, even like at home on like a handheld or like your phone. And it's like, like live, like I'll go play 3 hours with somebody, and like, I'm sure I messed up a ton of time, but like overall it was probably fine, and like nobody else really even notices.
It's sort of the median that you feel like, okay, well, I'm clear.
But especially like if you're in a studio, like, and then like, you're gonna play that part, and it's like, it's just everything is glaringly obvious, and it's like, and then we're gonna mute everything else and be like, oh yeah, that.
Let's hear that again. Yeah,
like, Jesus.
Well, the thing I find there are so many different styles of music over the course of my life that I absolutely adore. The one through line between all of them, or I should say the vast majority of them, I find, is this in the moment presence of playing with fellow musicians and being, again, hyper aware of what you're doing in that moment with everyone. Where the music, there's nothing better in the world, we all know this, than the feeling of like, it's like you're not even you're not in the driver's seat. You're just doing the thing. It's the most beautiful feeling in the world.
Exactly
like everyone, it's that. That's the reason why I truly think any of us do this. It's just you get addicted to that feeling, and the music that I tend to love is the music that is helmed by people who understand that and understand that there is a red light flashing right now, but it's just so we can hear this back later, and yeah, you're gonna fuck up. That doesn't mean that like, you know, that doesn't mean you use the sloppy take or the one that like, you know, it's like, no, you want to get it as close to what you want it to be as possible, but you also recognize that this has to be, music is an in the moment alive thing. And again, just for me, the music that I tend to adore the most is the music that embraces that and understands that this is alive right now, and you get, thanks to the magic of modern technology, to listen back to something that occurred. It's like a time machine. You get to play that back over, but you also recognize that like any moment of time, it's flawed, and there are things that I'm sure the people in that room wish they could do differently, but it presents that moment in time.
Yeah, this is gonna sound like boomer like opinion. I don't intend.
You know who you're talking to on this podcast.
And I don't intend it to, but I think you're right. Like, because like, you know, before the advent of, you know, digital recording, you know, like, yeah, it was literally just capturing a performance. Mm-hmm. You know, but then some people are just so good at it that those performances were all like pretty spot on anyway. You know, it's like, geez, but yeah, like you didn't used to have the luxury of 87 takes for one kickoff like I do in my bedroom, you know.
Yeah.
And again, they're like all those things, there's a balance. Like it's like that story of when ZZ Top recorded, I think it was Tres Hombres, I think. It could be one of the other ones, but where Billy wanted to have another, like a rhythm guitar part in there, and the producer they had was like, there's three of you guys, just play it. And then somebody left, and Billy just recorded all these guitar parts that he could then solo over. And the guy came back, and he's like, this is fantastic, I love this. It's like, yeah, because there's another guitar part, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a balance with all those things, but I just think that that's the way to do it.
Billy Gibbons is the best. ZZ Top.
I can't imagine having him in this room. I would love to talk to that.
Oh, he's the
he
best.
lives in Nashville, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
Does he?
I think so, yeah.
Gotta find
Yeah,
him.
we'll go.
I probably
some strings.
I have a buddy of mine, Andrew Simmons. Shout out to Andrew Simmons. He works at Mojo Tone. They're like a
Okay, yeah.
They make like they make all kinds of stuff, amps and cabs and musical stuff. And he, I guess they've done some work for Billy Gibbons. And I don't want to speak out of place, but he told me one time that he was like just like the sweetest dude.
Yeah.
He's like just like the sweetest man.
He's
awesome.
Anything I've ever seen of that man he's been one of my favorite guitar players since I was like 12, you know. But yeah, he's just seems like a really sweet guy, and I find he's often, as much as people in the know think so highly of him, I feel like generally a lot of people overlook how good of a guitar player he is. He's not, we'll throw like Clapton into the conversation. We'll throw a lot of people of that era into the conversation, but oftentimes for people for whom music is not their world, he can kind of fly under the radar, but he is such a phenomenal guitar player. Like just absolutely
100%.
Just so tasteful, and like we were talking about earlier, there's times when it's just like,
and he's the coolest dude in the world.
Exactly.
Definitely not mentioned in like the lists of greats as much as he should be.
I agree with
absolutely.
that. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Should be higher up in the conversation. For
and he's
sure.
just so cool.
Not that he's not.
It may have been that documentary, which was great. I don't know if you saw that.
The one on Netflix. Yeah, that was great.
I guess it was in that, and then like when he was talking about, they were probably that same recording session for Tres Hombres or something, and I think he said he like did a vocal take, and he just like wasn't it, and he said I think he like got up like first thing in the morning and like or did something, and like I forget what the deal was. Went out and like just ripped a couple of shots of bourbon or something like first thing in the morning when you still got like the sleep in his throat, and then did it so you could have that like extra gravel in his throat. This is back when he was like a young man.
He's one of those people who over time, I mean, I love his voice on those early records. I think his voice now, it just gets better and better with it. He's the man. He put out that record. I want to say it was this past year, but it was probably a couple years ago now. That solo record that he did.
Yeah,
I don't think I heard that.
I don't know that I'm hip to that either.
I need to check that out.
I'll show you. I want to say it was last year, but realistically, it was probably a few years ago now. And
I don't think I'm hip to that
fantastic.
either.
Really fucking good.
Hey man, we can get a little gear nerdy, I guess. That's also right up my alley. But thank God I'm not a good guitar player, because I would probably be broke buying guitars. Even though I do play other instruments, but like for whatever reason, like I just don't buy as many of those. I probably would if I could just have Les Paul, just 20 different kinds of guitars. But he put out like did a signature pickup called the Pearly Gates, and then Gibson did like a special like gold top, and it had like pinstriping, like hot rod pinstriping
cool.
on it. And I was like, man, I was like, I want to have one just to have one. But I was like, God, I wish I could play guitar if I could justify buying this.
Yeah.
I feel like if you could figure out a pedal steel, you could probably figure out how to play a guitar pretty quick.
Yeah,
Man,
you could figure it out.
People think that,
especially as a banjo player, you could figure it out.
Yeah, but that's open tuning too. Like that's what I'm saying. Like guitar blows my mind. Like I don't understand it. Like it makes no sense to me.
The thing that's fascinating about a guitar, just historically speaking, is it is designed to be a supportive instrument. So everything is designed around your open chords, your cowboy chords, and it's just through sheer force of will and people's imagination and just incredible whatever that magic is that they have steel-armed guitar into being a melodic instrument. And now, and especially thanks to amplification, obviously, now it can supply more than that, but it is a strange instrument to play the way that we play. It's not designed like a banjo to function the way that a banjo functions, or function the way that a steel functions. Yep. It is such an unnatural way of approaching an instrument that I think that can be it can be tricky, and I oftentimes feel like learning the sort of air quotes around right way of playing a guitar first can be beneficial, because then you can kind of see how far people have taken it. So like, here's the way that a guitar is sort of designed to be played, and here's all the other shit that people can do with it because of just pure incredible imagination.
It's interesting that even though like the way a guitar is played has changed so drastically, that like people kind of still stick with the standard tuning.
Yeah, no, it really is.
Because
for idiots like me who tend to play, songs made up of 3 chords, like it works. But if
that's not true, man. I've seen both of you guys play. Y'all know all the fancy chords.
I think
that's just what we're trying to show off.
I think it's one of those things where it's just been in standard tuning for so long. Because like in college,
for sure.
I had a phase where I experimented with all fourths, and then
really, I don't remember this.
It's not like I was like
feel like I wasn't proud of it.
No, it's not like just in the practice room. It's not like I was playing gigs.
I didn't do like a series of records.
Like, obviously if you're playing country strumming cowboy chords, you want the standard tuning. But like I experimented with all fourths, and like it makes learning things and visualizing things so much easier.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And it's like, depending on what you're doing, like at the time it was like, this is way better for what I'm doing, but I've just played in this other inferior tuning for so long. I'm just going to go back to that because my brain is stuck in this way.
Yeah.
But,
well, again, because it's all based around those movable forms on the guitar, and if you're not handcuffed to that.
But if you think about it, if every string is the same interval, every chord is the same.
Oh, yeah.
Anywhere you put it. Whereas
absolutely.
in standard tuning, for each string set, you have to learn a completely
different
shape.
That's what I hate about
chord.
guitar. I think
it makes it way more confusing.
That's what drew me to the pedal steel when I first got one, I think. And then I realized that I think after I'd fallen in love with it, that I realized that I think it was just like a false summit kind of.
Yeah.
Because there's this lifetime of, even just volume pedal discipline and like, but the thing about, and tell guitar, it annoys me because the guitar players, once you've done that with guitar, I think pedal steel, at least to get going, is simpler because you're basically holding a capo.
Yeah.
And so without moving that at all, you can play all the notes in the scale. Mm-hmm. So, and even all the chords, you just have to have a series of like pedals and then knee levers and combinations thereof. But once you learn the 7, combinations of pedals and knee levers to play 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, it's the exact same in any key. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have a different shape like you do on guitar. I always hated that about guitar.
I mean, really, historically, the reason we do it for guitar is to allow us just the actual physical ability to play open chords. Just because if we're in fourths, just on a technical level, the intervals are too far for us to be able to fret these shapes. But if you're not worrying about like playing that open G cowboy chord.
Yeah, which tons of styles of music you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, you don't use that. Then being in fourths, I mean, I totally agree. Yeah. After
experimenting with it, like if you don't need the cowboy chords, like it's way better. But if
I'm also
most people have played in the standard tuning for so many years, it's like
Yeah, I'm also just fascinated by
stuck in my
like
ways.
the history of the progression of guitar, like how we actually get
Yeah,
to.
I mean,
it's always a fluid thing.
Yeah,
It's
because you're
always
right. Like the
changing.
canon of guitar is like almost exclusively standard tuning at this point. I mean, not really.
Yeah.
I mean, there's there's
all the
dad gad and
classic
open,
songs
but
and-
yeah.
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 Man, I mean, if you want to learn Sweet Child of Mine, you're going to learn it in standard. Or E flat or whatever. God
Oh
damn.
yeah, at this point, yeah, half step down is stand. Like
Yeah. I've been keeping.
I hate that for steel though, because it just like I was just like, come on, man, like.
Nobody's going to care about this, but maybe Brian, but I'll say it anyway. For a good long while now, probably a couple of years, I've kept my acoustic guitars down a whole step, and I keep my electric guitars in standard.
Dude.
I do think electric guitars actually sound better in E flat, but I just, for whatever reason, I keep them in standard. But recently, I've retuned my acoustics back up to standard, and I love it again. I don't know why, but it's like I think maybe it was just enough
a
time.
lot of
but
guitars sound better not in E.
I agree.
I've heard a lot of guitar players
I
say
think
that.
it's-
I was
depends on what they
playing in
resonate
D
at.
for a long time. I'm actually back up to E now as well, just because I put the guitar I've been playing. I've been using tape wounds, and they just don't have the same kind of sustain when
Yeah.
you down tune them. But I think a lot of guitars like just have such like a deeper resonance when everything just
especially
kind of melds
larger-
together
larger
nicer.
body guitars. I feel like I have a parlor that it sounds good. It resonates really well when I tune it down to D, but I feel like that one probably sounds better in standard. But yeah, a nice full my Gibson from the 50s. That one sounds fucking so good when you tune it down.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard guitar players say that. Do you find that some guitars like different guitars like this guitar might like E flat,
Oh, for
where
sure.
this guitar like really comes alive in
For
D,
sure.
Yeah,
or this one is good
absolutely.
in E
Yeah.
standard, right? Like,
I think so much, especially. I'm sure this is true of electric guitars as well, but I think particularly for acoustic guitars, because I mean that resonance is so important. Yeah, I really do think that's massive for acoustic guitars.
Yeah, it definitely depends on the guitar, but I do find like most guitars sound better if you're using super thin strings. You're gonna have tuning issues if you tune down. But like I do find most guitars, you put some bigger strings on and tune down to D or E flat,
yeah.
I agree.
you just get
Yeah.
like a better tone.
Yeah, well, I was most familiar like early on in like music is like with bluegrassers. So yeah, everybody I knew played acoustic guitar, played like mediums and big string,
I
heavy
prefer
right
really
hand.
thick strings. Yeah, I'm an acoustic and electric. I like fighting the guitar a little bit.
I like I'm not much of a guitar player, but I do have a Gibson Triple O, and I feel like it likes to live in E flat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You find what works,
totally. Yeah, no, some guitars just like fit a
Yeah.
certain type of tuning.
It's nice.
Yeah.
God damn. Well, dude, I'm so fucking glad you did this. This was a ball.
Yeah,
man.
thanks
This
for
was
having
so
me.
much
I
fun.
don't. Yeah, I love hanging out with you guys anyway. So it's I don't know. I don't know that anybody else will find it amusing, but
I think it's just such a wonderful excuse to just sit down and just be present with friends and just talk. I think it's such a great thing. And anytime we get to do this with anyone, it's great. But when we get to do this with friends, it's a ball because
Always the best
yeah,
ones.
because there's always there's always some distraction in life. Not in a bad way, but just there's always something going on. So it's always nice to just try to be as present as you can be with people you like.
yeah,
So
no, I love you guys. This is super fun.
this was a ball. Hell yeah. Well,
Thanks, dude.
yeah. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
Fuck yeah.
thanks for having me. I appreciate
We'll
it.
have to have you back
Yeah, please.
I'm
This
sure,
is great.
one day in the future.
Man, oh man. That was fun. That was a ton of fun, dude. Like,
Yeah,
really.
no, this is great. I
Thank
mean,
you
like
for
I said,
doing that.
we
I think that was maybe the most we stayed on music for fucking that whole thing. Like that was amazing.
I know,
don't think
yeah,
we've
maybe that's
ever
good.
done that.
I don't know if that's good or bad. It's probably more entertaining to like talk about some like
I just fucking
dumb shit.
No, I love that. Though. That's fantastic.
You want to start back up and like talk about politics?
You wanna?
Yeah, we can rip another like 30 minutes on politics.